Word. Hi, everyone. It's Amy Major again with Spirit Rescue Talk. I have a really important guest. I have another Amy with me today, Amy Roberge, and she has been with me for a few years now. And she's an amazing rescue medium. She's also a psychic medium. She also does a lot of other work, but I'll have her kind of introduce herself to you. We're really excited to talk about a lot of things that Amy's been through that might relate to you, help you with your situations, and learn a little bit something today. So hi, Amy, how you doing?
Hello, Amy. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so grateful to have you on, especially because I went to your house recently over the summer and we did some work there. But why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself and how you kind of got started in this type of work?
Sure. A little bit about me. I've been sensitive my whole life. I came in this life having memories of just before I was born and being very apprehensive about coming. I actually
Mm.
remember talking with my spirit guides about it. One of the memories I have of being in school in my earlier years in first and second grade, when they talk about what they want to be when they grow up. And I raised my hand and said, well, I'm already a medicine woman. I'm a Native American. I know how to heal people and deliver babies. And the looks I got from everybody, it really was a defining moment for me to realize that most people didn't have past life memories. And I didn't know where to put it. I was young and I knew it didn't happen in this lifetime, but I knew it happened before. So I really could see, by the responses I got, that it was something I had to be very careful about talking about.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, they must be kind of like, who is this?
Yes.
At a young age. I did have quite a bit of past life dreams and memories when I was a kid as well, but mine was all about being an entertainer in New York City.
Oh.
So of course, when I was a kid, I was like, look at me, I'm on stage. And I was trying to sing. I was horrible at singing, but singing and dancing, we bring our past life information and our knowledge and experience with us for the first few years. So I always kind of watch the kids between the ages of 1 and 5, because that's when their past lives are really with them quite a bit, but up until the age 10, and then they kind of starts dwindling down to like they take on more of this life and
Yes.
those actions. But it sounds like maybe you brought your past life information and knowledge with you and you kind of continued it.
Very clearly. And I have memories too of not so good memories of being persecuted as a witch, and because I was a healer. So, some problems with trusting people and just being very guarded about being open. So coming up through my high school years, another thing I can share with the folks there is I had a friend of mine that I was after we graduated, it was that summer, and I ran into him at the store outside in the parking lot. And the whole time we were talking, I had very heightened emotions. I felt very emotional. I felt an enormous amount of love. I wasn't very close to this person. And as we were talking, I could tell that he was conflicted, that there was something happening energetically. And my guides will usually alert me when something's happening. Pay attention, pay attention. So we ended the conversation, we hugged, we walked away. And within a couple hours, I had heard word that within a half an hour of me seeing him, he was hit by a car and killed. That night, this is one of the first memories I have of transitioning consciously, is I dreamt that I was walking down a hallway in the hospital. I saw all his family sitting down along the walls, grieving. I walked right into the room. I saw him sitting on the bed. He was a wrestler, so he had his wrestle bag. He had his head in his hands. He was very distraught. I sat down next to him and I proceeded to explain what had happened, that he was in an accident and he had been killed. And in that moment, it was like I woke up like a lucid dream, like I became conscious and I was very aware of what was happening. And it was extremely important to get him to understand what had happened, to accept it, and to listen to his guides and move on. So I talked with him and I got him. He was very upset. I don't want to leave my family. This happened so quickly, and I got him through it, and I was able to transition him. And I woke up remembering that. So, throughout the years, most of it would be through dream time. I would wake up and sometimes I'd have memories, sometimes I wouldn't. In my early 20s, I moved to the beach and I would have dreams of kind of hovering over the water. Of course, there'd be a drowning, and I would receive the spirit. And again, they'd be distraught, confused about what had just happened. counsel them, answer some questions, got their vibration just up a little bit, just elevating a little bit, enough where they could perceive their guide and perceive the light. And then I would transition. And then, of course, the next day in the paper, you would see that something had happened the night before.
Speaking of that, because I'm teaching a rescue mediumship class and we just discussed that very thing. And I'm going to ask you the question because I know you've worked with me before in the past. A lot of people are going to ask you, okay, these people have recently passed, they've gone through a traumatic crisis experience through their death. Why are you getting involved? Why aren't you just allowing their guides and their angels to connect to them? Because a lot of other people, like, you're getting in the way. So can you explain to them why we're needed so much for the person who's just recently departed?
Well, we resonate to their level. We're dense, we're human. So in that moment, they still carry that density. So of course, they're going to radiate to whatever they can relate to. They relate to the human. So they really, a rescue medium is so needed right now because we're kind of the in-between, with a bridge. And we speak the language of what they can understand.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know my guides kind of positioned me for that work and kind of threw me into where I wasn't actively seeking it. But now that I've grown in my education, I know that it's really people like us that kind of still hover on the line of having the density, but one foot in the other realm, where we really can help with that bridging of the transition.
Absolutely. Like you said, it's that denseness that helps the spirits see us so much easier than they can see their guides and angels. And I kind of tell people, like, look, just because it's spirit and spirit doesn't mean they're on the same vibrational level where they can see each other, because we're technically a spirit inside a body on a denseness where most people can't see their guides and angels. It isn't any different for people that have recently stepped out of their body. They're still at a denseness if they're in a crisis situation. So they can see us much easier than they can see their guides and angels. So we're the mediator. We're the
Yes.
ones that helps point them in the right direction, saying, look, you've got help right here. And you explained it perfectly with that. Do you find that you work with a lot of crisis, or what type of earthbound spirits?
As you said, mostly crisis, a lot of illnesses. I had another experience in my early 20s that was getting me ready to go, so to speak, with this work consciously, where I'd met somebody the night before through a radio station promotion thing. Again, it wasn't somebody I had a good rapport with. We talked for a while. And that night, driving home with a friend, I just kept seeing this blinding white light in my third eye, like, and I'm talking and I'm doing the human thing and I'm getting the spirit thing of the white light. And I knew it meant something, but I just couldn't quite understand what had happened just yet. Well, the next morning on the radio station, they announced that there was this terrible accident, named the two people involved and the person that I spoke with the night before. And I believe on some level, I was transitioning him at another, consciousness. I was transitioning him. When I drove by the spot about a week or two later, I had a mental conversation with the spirit. He was still there. He was still waiting. He really believed his friend left him there. And
Wow.
I had to explain to him, no, there was an accident. You've been killed, you've died. You need to go where they're telling you to go. And then I went to the funeral, because the funeral was a little bit extended. They were waiting for family to come in. And I saw him standing behind his father. I saw the spirit of this person standing behind his father. It was very sad.
Well, I know you said that you have a lot of spirits kind of hanging out with you all the time. How do you manage so many spirits?
So I went through a time where you would do this work, and then I started the family, and I had 3 children in the house, and it would get to the point where it's a little bit destructive. And you have your moments where you can laugh at it, but when you're trying to raise a family, and a lot of the nighttime activity became pretty active, where I would send somebody, and they were always coming, looking for me, coming in the room, walking around the bed. But when my husband started to notice it, I said, I got to do something here. And I called a meeting with my spirit team through meditation, and I was going to quit. And I talked to somebody about this before I did this, because there's a lot of thought involved, especially if it's my calling. And she's like, no, you're not going to quit. This is your calling. What you can do, though, is do this a little bit differently and create your own space to transition. So I developed what I call etheric waiting room, and I really like that because it was out of this space, out of the density of my home, where I'm trying, it's going to affect the emotional tone in the home when you have these folks walking around. It's in the etheric. And as you know, in the land of the etheric and energy, there's no time, there's no space. Whatever these folks need, if it's a walk on the beach, if it's to go to bed, if it's counseling, whatever they need. And I like this idea too, because they need a little time. They need that space. They need that time to adjust. So I do my transitioning. There's times where I do it twice a week, and there's times I just do it once a week. And I put a job posting out to my spirit team to manage the etheric waiting room. I have a woman that does that. I have a team that puts together the space that they need to. A receiving team, of course, I have my gatekeeper. And I always, when I do my transitioning, I do that consciously through ceremony. And I'll meet with my team and I'll kind of get like demographics, and I'll kind of get like, who we have, and I can kind of feel, who we have coming through. And I talk with them for a few minutes, and then I say, okay, you can go ahead and bring everyone forward. And then I just talk with them for a little bit, and just to get a little bit of a rapport going. And then I tell them we're going to do a short exercise just to get their vibration energy up a little bit. And I tell them, I say, what I want you to do is to think about something you're really looking forward to when you go over to the other side. It could be an activity, it could be a place like a walk on the beach, or it could be gardening, it could be a person you're looking forward to seeing, it could be a furry friend. I have to be very careful when I'm saying those options, because some people are triggered. They may have had a horrible childhood. They may have, been homeless. So to be out, I just have to be careful how I say it. So I give a lot of options to something hopefully they can resonate with. An activity and I can already feel the vibration lifting. I can feel everyone. And I said, let's build that excitement a little bit. And I said, in a moment, I want you to look around. You may feel a change. You may see the light. You may feel the warmth of the light. Because again, everybody perceives differently. And I don't want to target one person that okay, you want to see the white light. And what if they don't? What if they only feel the warmth of the white light around them? You may see your shepherding, you may see your guardians, you may see your furry friends. And I found in the last, I want to say 6 months, I have Indigenous peoples that are coming up and offering help. And they kind of put that invitation out through one of the transitioning sessions I did. They want to help our ancestors, the Indigenous peoples of the lands. And sometimes I have animals coming through, and I'm now also transitioning animals too. So while I'm doing the transitioning, the etheric waiting room, I always extend the invitation to people in the area that would like to join in. And I always, the counseling piece is huge. You want to make sure you really touch upon what these folks are going through. And I usually say, sometimes when you're doing the same thing isn't working, it's time to try something else. And I really feel that resonates with a lot of folks, because they're a little hesitant and they think, well, maybe next time, maybe next time. Sometimes they're doing the same thing, nothing's changing, it's time to try something else. So it's that fear, that impetus for, anxiety. But I usually can get them through it. And I always have success with transitioning everyone.
Wow. And I think having that etheric waiting room is really fabulous. Can you explain to people why we create these etheric waiting rooms? Why don't just allow them to continue to wander where they are? What is it that really helps to stimulate? It's kind of like maybe going to a doctor's office, walking into a waiting room, but it's so much more expansive in the etheric area because, like you said, you can create it to their liking. They can go on a trip, they can go by the beach, they can go wherever they need to go. Now, I know a lot of people are going to ask, well, they can do that without the etheric waiting room, right? So,
well, not necessarily. You want to think of the emotional tone. When people pass, it's the emotional tone that dictates their experience. I don't know if a lot of people, there's that movie out there where dreams may come, and the woman is upset and she's distraught. And it's the emotional tone. For them to be walking around, they're seeking something, they're missing someone, they have addiction, there's a lot of reasons. It's not good for us, it's not good for them. There's no growth in it for them. We need to move on. In our lives here, there's always growth, there's always learning. It's the same for these earthbounds, and we want more for them. And I tell them that when I'm talking with them. I said, I always say, you landed well, you found yourself well here, and you want more for yourself. To find yourself in this space, at some point you wanted more, and that's good. So again, that waiting space is a little bit of that bridge, that transitional area, to get what they need, to get themselves a little bit calmed. to get some of their questions answered.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Crazy question for you. But do you find that you only connect to earthbounds, or do you find wandering entities or other life forms that you've connected to that may seem a little lost as well, because maybe they're stuck in a dimension, then they're a little scared and confused? Have you connected to any other entities where you've needed that etheric waiting room or to send them home?
Well, through working with you, you educated me on the multidimensionals. So while I'm working with my session with opening the light and working with my folks, I also pair it with opening. I have another spot that I open up a multidimensional portal. And I use that opportunity to clear multidimensionals that are, I always say, destructive or lower vibrational. Again, they're here for learning, but they can be destructive and they can siphon life force. And I also feel the clearing from the earthbound. Sometimes they have multidimensional attachments on them. So it's an opportunity to clear them of any attachments. I do feel lots of higher ascended, the archangel energies come in that like to work with me. Sometimes they're different. There's more of a presence feeling. There's more an enveloping feeling, and it's not an earthbound.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
certainly. And again, once to go back to the resonating vibration, earthbound is very dense and a lot of emotion attached to it. But when you have the higher ascended peoples that are coming in, your guidance, your team, there's a different feel. There's a lot of love that comes in, so you can discern the difference.
Wow, and it's such an amazing field to have all that support coming in. Can you name, just like, give us an example of what type of spiritual beings work with you on your team?
I like to work with the archangels. So I call in Archangel Gabriel, Raphael, Michael, and Uriel. Master Jesus comes in sometimes, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, the Divine Feminine.
Wow.
And very different. Sometimes it's people from their lineage, their loved ones will come in, their shepherding spirits. So
Right.
sessions are always different, and you can attest to that too.
Oh yeah, because
Yeah.
it's like, we bring in our comfort zone of the deities and ascended masters we work with, but we also have to take into consideration different cultures and religions that may not connect to the same types of figures that we connect to. So getting more acclimated to the different deities, gods,
Yes.
religious backgrounds, cultures gives us a little bit of an idea. And sometimes we just don't know. We're limited sometimes. How do you handle those situations?
Or like Kuan Yin, the divine for I feel her come in sometimes different. I do feel the ancestral lineages, they'll offer to come in to help, like you said, that will resonate to somebody I have in the group. Some of the real old fashioned, rigid thinking peoples that are, some of the old traditional that will come in. I always set intention of who is coming in to help. I always say only ascended, higher vibrational beings may join this work. Absolutely no lower vibrational destructive energies may. So I always set that intention to make sure that there's nothing destructive that comes in.
Have you ever had any real destructive or negative entities come in?
No, and I'm always ready for it. And I got educated through taking your classes. You have to be open to that. I've had psychic attacks the night before certain situations, but not necessarily with my clearing. I have a nice working space. I've set it up well. A gatekeeper. My space where I sleep. I mean, it's been set up very well. But you have to be smart when you do this work. You have to be ready for it. You have to. I had a situation a couple days ago where I worked with my spirit team where they'll give me a heads up about activating my spirit shield. And now I want to say the last 6 months, it'll activate on its own. I could be out at a store and it'll just come up. It'll go on its own. And a few days ago, I was getting the message that they wanted me to use a different type of shield. And this is the one where it's like a dome, but it has mirrors where it reflects out. I didn't question it. You trust, you can question it, waste your time, but they're right in the end. You know that. And that night, that evening, I was sitting there and I felt like something try to come in. I felt it flying in and hit me. I felt the space of my shield stop it, and I was glad that I heeded that advice. So something was trying to come into, and it wasn't good.
Well, this type of mediumship is very specialized, very different from psychic mediumship work, where a lot of mediums connect to spirits on the other side and they relay messages. Rescue mediumship is so much more specialized, more detailed with the amount of flow of different entities, spirits, the type of work we have to do. And I know a lot of people incorporate a lot of energy clearing work into the rescue mediumship. Do you do a lot of energy clearing work as well?
So I like what you said because it's very varied and you have to get education. And I thought I had a good base of education, and I met you, and I think I've taken all your classes, but it's extremely important to be educated for the unexpected. People like us we're like a beacon, and something can come up very unexpected. You have to be ready for it. So I just feel that with my armor, sometimes you have to be the warrior, sometimes you have to be the counselor, or sometimes you just have to be somebody that's present. I work as a hospice chaplain as well. So I work on, I'm working, I think of it as working on this side of the veil as well.
Wow. Yeah,
So
it's so true. We have so many roles that I couldn't even begin to explain them, and the type of scenarios that we come across. There's not enough training that I could possibly teach that would give everybody all the scenario details that they're going to have to be prepared for. And as rescue mediumship grows and the etheric fields start to kind of thin a little bit, where we're starting to go into more dimensional layers, we're seeing things we haven't seen before. So those of us that are rescue mediums, we're more attuned to being able to see these different vibrational frequencies and entities that are in these other fields and these other dimensions. And we're now even going into different realities. And it's gotten kind of crazy when it comes to spirit rescue work, where I know with psychic mediumship, they go up to the astral world and they kind of have a conversation. I'm like, I was so jealous, in my development with rescue work. And I'm like, oh, that looks so much easier. That just feels so great. And my guides are like pushing me down, going, no, get back down there. And you're like, oh my goodness, really? So, with the development that you do, have you really seen anything that kind of just blew your mind? You're like, I can't believe I'm actually doing this.
well, I've worked with channeling, so I usually write messages almost like an automatic writing, and I got that was from the nines. It was a collective. They call themselves the nines, and my discernment is top notch. So I felt like it was higher ascended beings, and without calling it extraterrestrial, more of the collective, universal energies. I'm starting to feel. Do you sense that too? More the universal stuff coming in, assisting the earth and assisting with the ascension of the earth and the peoples. We're becoming more open to their messages. It's a very, very high vibration. And
Right.
I think people weren't ready for it for a long time, but we're coming into a time where we are ready for it.
Wow. We have a lot of star seeds, as they say, a lot of ascended souls coming in to help with the shift of frequency on the earth. But I also know they're more susceptible to attack and lower frequency and being overwhelmed by the lower denseness of the earth and all the entities and spirits and everything that have been here. Have you ever experienced anyone kind of coming to you feeling kind of attacked or feeling like they may have an attachment because they're a little special or a little, as a star seed or somebody that's not familiar with the negative energy?
We always see, I have a friend of mine that I work with, but we always see people that are just opening. I
Mm.
mean, literally, that don't have a background, that are literally, I mean, like almost overnight opening. They're always struggling. There's a density they have to move through. It's their stuff, it's their blocks, it's how they perceive. And yeah, that they do take advantage of that. They do. The darkness does take advantage of that. And a lot of them are put into a label of you're crazy, or it's depression, or you're going off the deep, and they're terrified. And I think something on their, maybe their spirit team or their soul is saying, reach out to an energy worker, go get some Reiki, we've had people say to us, I thought I was going crazy. And you're not going crazy, you're just waking up.
Right. And people think the spiritual awakening is going to be a wonderful experience until they realize it's waking up to everything, including their own darkness that they
Yes.
need to purge so they can raise their vibrational frequency. I think that's one of the hardest parts of
It's
that
just
spiritual.
really hard, and there's a lot of it's just a lot. It's a very trying time, and we will usually give the tools and what they need to navigate. Getting the gatekeeper. I mean, it's just so imperative you have a gatekeeper, and it's not just to protect your energy. Well, it protects your, your devices, your the electronic stuff, and people you come into contact, and um, it just and then setting up your team. Well, I thought it was incredible, and it started out as a joke. Well, I'm going to put a job posting out on my spirit team, that someone that's going to help me with, and it was real. I had a meeting. I called a meeting, and I called, did a job posting. Who wants to run the etheric waiting room? And somebody that wasn't on my spirit team came forward, and I know her name, and we worked together, and she, the way we live our life is so parallel. We have, we live the earth life, and we're humans, but we have one foot in the light, and we're working on this dimension, and it takes a lot of getting used to, but I think you do get a point where you get a good working relationship. At least I think I have.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You never know who you're going to work with in the spirit world. Sometimes you'll have someone walk up to you and like, I'm going to work with you now. And you're like, who are you? Who are you? And it feels good, but people think they only have one or two guides that really work with them. But when you're doing this work, you could be working with dozens,
That's right.
dozens of different spirits, spiritual entities. We can also be working with entities that are very dense vibrational frequency that most people would consider kind of evil, but they're not. They're just in the lower world where they do a lot of shepherding of these really low level spirits, and they work with us to kind of create a new consciousness or awareness for these lower level spirits to be shepherded out of the lower dimension as well.
Yeah, and you had educated me on that too, and that's interesting. I mean, to become the work that we do and to become well-rounded, that's information that a light worker would need to know about, is to have somebody, a lower vibrating dimensional being, to be able to shepherd. And I know people that they've had a demon approach them very, using their manners and saying, where do I need to go? Where do I go? And then that person that you have on your team can show them, because again, it has to be somebody, a shepherding spirit that resonates with their vibration to be able to communicate, this is where you need to go.
And a lot of people that are developing mediums into rescue mediumship might be a little afraid by that, going, this looks really evil, or this looks something like I'm a monster. Why is it trying to work with me? It's trying to fool me. It's trying to deceit and try to get me down into a lower world. And I think I kind of had that thought for a little while in the beginning when I started having these real dense entities saying, I'm going to work with you. I'm like, oh, no, you're not, but then after a while, my guides were like, look, we can't go down that low. You can't go down that low, but these spirits that are down there still need your help. So you're going to have other workers of a lower denseness that's going to be able to bring these spirits up to you. So they are essentially the shepherds of the lower realm. So my guides had to teach me so many things that I would have been like, this is totally fiction. This doesn't exist. This, it's completely unreal, especially when it comes to the denseness. But then there's also magical creatures that a lot of people connect to. There's creatures that we don't see here in the real world, but as we're kind of going into those different dimensions, we're seeing things that we've never seen before. Have you really seen anything that kind of said, "Ooh, that's interesting"?
Well, I know you have to develop a rapport with the nature creatures that you have in your yard, and you know that too. And I've asked them for protection, and some things have really happened that without them we would have really had a hard time. But I feel the energies. I haven't seen them, the trolls and the gnomes and the fairies, but I feel them, and they're there, and I feel that I connect with them when I go out and I sit outside, and we have a working relationship together. If you don't, they resonate to they're very focused on the earth and
Right.
the good of the earth. And if they see and you don't have a relationship, you're in trouble.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I saw
Yeah.
when I went out to your house, there were actually quite a few in your yard. Do you want to explain the experience we had when we went out to your house and kind of tried to get a few spirits out the door? Because it was kind of like overwhelming at that point with all those spirits in.
Yeah. Well, Amy explained, I always knew this property was active because of the work that I do. And we built this house, the very first night I slept here, which has happened to me in my other places. I had the dream that I get when I moved to a new location where there was a bunch of spirits and they wanted to know what I was doing here. I just moved here. I'm here to stay. There was a bunch of them, and they were the ones from this area that frequent this area, and they wanted to know what my intentions were. But Amy had come out here, and she kind of walked the property and could discern what would. And there was an area in my basement where I think it was around the 1600s, 1600s. People from Scotland, this is a rich history that has people that migrated from Scotland, and there were the wars going on, and this area was used as a basic dumping ground where they had brought victims of the battle. They just dumped them, and I had a nice pile on my property that we.
Remember that pile? I was like, what is
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, some of them were dead and some of them were injured,
And that of course was a residual imprint. There weren't any earthbounds from that war, but it was enough to kind of create a little bit of a crack in the dimensional wall where it could have let things in. But just having that denseness of the residual imprints piled on top of each other, you can feel it when you're really walking into it. And a lot of people are going to think their places are haunted when really they're not. They're just residual imprints.
And then you would let us know too that we had a nice portal, open freeway portal going from here to the cemetery.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
That was interesting. And I'm like, what's over there? What's over there? You're like, that's a cemetery. I'm like, oh, and I think there was a morgue over in the area that I was pointing to as well. I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
You had said to me, do you want me to close it or do you want to leave? I'm like, please close it. But you had also taught me how to close portals too, which is definitely a skill that we need to have while working. But I have noticed the work change, or the peoples that are coming. I think they were using it as like a super highway. Some of the Earthbounds, they were jumping into that portal and coming in, not necessarily from the cemetery always, but using it as a super highway. So I've noticed the work slow down a little bit since we closed that. So.
Oh, good. But it's never going to completely close for you because, as you know, if you're a strong rescue medium, you're a beacon.
Yeah.
So there's no real getting out of that, out of that spiritual highway of all these spirits coming to see you. Have any spirits come to see you that may have come from like quite a distance? Because I've had a lot of spirits come to me from Scotland, England, Australia, China. They're coming from all
I
over.
started some work around COVID where I would lay out a world map on the table, and I would use my pendulum and ask my spirit team to show me which areas were dense with earthbounds or residual energies from the earth that needed clearing. It was very active, like over Europe and just different areas. Again, since we had COVID, there were a lot of energies that kind of got stagnant. It happened so quick, and there were so many of them. And so I did that work again through shamanic journeying and traveling to the space. I did a session where I went into journeying with a mass transition of at least 1,000 from COVID. And I kind of improvised as I went, where I opened up. I was thinking it was going to be like a very large room, but it was like I said, close to 1,000 people. So I kind of had to open up the looks on their faces, again, that this tragic illness, it happened so quick. They were taken from their loved ones. They were taken from this life so quickly, and they were confused. They didn't know where to go. And I could see the stagnated energy kind of holding them, like they were all tightly bunched up where they couldn't move around. And I had to open up. I actually pictured a wall coming down, almost like an arena type or a wall. And then I could see the meadow. I actually could see the meadow where they were going to cross over.
Wow. It's really amazing because it's really hard to talk about with COVID, with deaths, because everyone, they have to go through such a tragic situation to lose a loved one to begin with. And then to have the hardship of knowing that they could be earthbound in the process. That's why we don't really like talking too much about like I've had tragic situations, especially with children, and the children have come to me, they've been earthbound, or a fragment of them is earthbound. I don't like to tell anyone about it because it's like the parents are going through enough as it is. let them have the peace of mind knowing their child is in the beautiful heaven space. But, as we know through experience, that isn't always the case. Sometimes spirits do kind of wander. They kind of get encased in a consciousness of fear that kind of halts them from their progress. But, a really great thing to kind of mention, which I try to mention a lot, is that being earthbound isn't the worst thing in the world. I don't want people thinking, oh my God, they're earthbound. This is horrible. They're in so much pain. Can you explain a little bit about what it's like for a spirit to be earthbound and why not to worry so much about them?
Yeah. So again, at the moment of death, it's the emotionality that dictates where your state of mind is. And like we all are, when we get upset, it lasts a while. It could be a short time, it could be a long time. So we really have to navigate through that. The confusion, being upset. Again, that's an earthbound, that's an earth density 3D emotion. So some of them wandering. I had somebody with me for a while. It was a teenager that they committed suicide, and he says, "I know I have to go. I just need some time. I need some time." And I let him hang around for a little while because I was intimate that he was going to go. And I've had children kind of run up to me and grab me, energetically, and I get the sense from my team they're okay. They're just doing their thing. Give them a little time, like we do with each one of us. Just give them a little time. You'll know if you need to transition them right away, or you'll know, just give them a little space. And like you had said, when there's an event, usually if you read about something in the paper, how can I help? If there's a car accident or a fire or something, it's about 6 months. They need that time, about 6 months. It could be longer, it could be shorter, but give them time. Their guidance is always available to them. They're always there, ready at any moment, but they have to wait for that person to be ready to
They
receive.
do. They
Yeah.
really do. And why do they have to wait for that person to be ready? We can't force them into light, can we?
Yes, we will. Mhm.
That free will is so important.
Yeah, and when I talk to my folks before I transition, that's part of what I say, and I could feel them. But what about my love? And I say, your questions are going to get answered. You're going to be able to come back for visits. Let's get you where you need to go first, and then you can come back. This is a safer way to do it. You're upset. Let's get you folks feeling better. Some of you that are not feeling well from physical ailments, let's get you feeling better, and then you can come back. You have to tell them that. They don't know. They don't know.
No, they don't. And, some of them are so confused at that point. But as we discussed before, there's fragmented souls too. And in these fragmented souls, they have a very limited amount of consciousness and awareness of their situation, who they are, what their past is. So they can be in this is pure state of confusion and may encase themselves in an alternate reality based on projection of their mind. So sometimes going in and actually communicating with them can be a little tough, such as somebody from 300 years ago, and they've been living the same scene over and over and over again as a fragmented soul. How do you handle a situation like that, where you have to kind of like step in and not like shock the
You have
spirit?
to improvise in the moment. You have to use with what you have. Like you mentioned, somebody, if it's 300 years ago, you kind of you join them where they're at. And there's a lot of counseling skills that go into when we do this work of how to, when you have a child, how can I get in? First of all, because you have to build a rapport, or they want nothing to do with you. Who are you? You're intruding on my space. So you have to be able to build that rapport, and then you have to know how to connect to truly connect with somebody. You
Hmm.
know,
Have you ever had any spirits that didn't want to talk to you? Because like, you're a woman. How dare you?
no, I really don't think I have anything as of yet. I've been successful, I think, through the help that I brought in with different asking for their family members to come through, with their furry friends, shepherding spirits, the indigenous. Somehow we're connecting. We're being able to connect with them to reach them. So I
Well, I
haven't
wanted to
yet.
ask, you know, what's your favorite part about being a rescue medium?
I want to help. I want to be in service. And I think any light worker should have a declaration of what they want to connect to and so every day I say my declaration, and when I open ceremony, when I close, I say, we are in service to the light. And again, you're protecting yourself energetically from when you set your intention, when you set your declaration of what you're connecting to. I'm also a metaphysical minister, and I got that designation again for that protection piece, to have these are my people. We are all in service to the creator, of who you think the creator is. We're all in this together.
We are. We
Yeah.
are. So, how can people kind of connect to you if they are in need of your services, or if they have any questions about rescue mediumship and they really resonated with you and your experience? How can people connect?
Sure. They can reach me on email. It's my name, Amy Roberge at me, like at me.com.
Well, that's pretty easy to find. And also, you can find her here on Facebook as well. I'll have the links up to contact Amy because, like I said, tons of information. And I kind of felt when I was teaching her, I didn't need to teach her. She kind of knew everything already. And I was just like, oh, and we would have some indirect rescue circles when she would start teaching. I'm like, yeah, you go, girl, you do this and show what you know. And you just have come so far. I'm so proud of everything you've
Well,
done.
like I said to my husband earlier, I'm like, it's going to feel so weird talking about this because we live this life and there's not a lot of places where we can be open. And you've changed my life, Amy, with the classes and being connected to you. And it's been so nice to talk about it. We got to get this information out there.
It's because he's like 25 years ago when I started getting involved, nobody was talking about this. So you literally felt like the black sheep of the spiritual family, and you're like, no one to talk to. And that's why I felt like doing this show and having people explain their experiences and any techniques that they have will really help others that are starting to develop in this type of work or have already been doing it and didn't know who to reach out to. They have a resource now and they know they're part of a community that's growing and really expanding in the spiritual communities. And I'm just so grateful to have you here to share your stories with us.
Thank you, Amy.
I'm so grateful. And thank you all of you for joining us today. And I look forward to our next session and our next interview. Please reach out to me, post some comments below because we'd like to see, and we know that we've kind of impacted your life a little bit for the better. And let Amy know, or myself, Amy, know if you have any questions. And we will see you next time. Bye.